Hey guys, before we get into this video, I just want to say that once Season 9 hits, I'll be doing a Road to Diamond stream, so if you guys want to check that out, there'll be a link in the description of this video, and you can go follow my stream, and yeah, I'd massively appreciate it if you came and check me out. Hey guys, in this video we're going to go over the best starting items, builds and runes for Fiora going into Season 9. In the past, Fiora's only really had one true build to go for, so a lot of item changes recently have made it possible for a few builds to be available, so we're going to go over what builds they are and when to pick them. But before we get into the builds, we need to first go over the starting items that you're going to be choosing. Nothing too crazy with the starter items. 90% of the time you're going to want to take Doran's Blade in one pot. Doran's Blade's just a really good purchase in general. It gives you a bunch of flat stats for early all-ins, and Fiora's level 1 isn't actually that bad, so if you can get an all-in going, paired with Conqueror and her passive, you win a lot of matchups early, so the D-Blade really shines. Like I say, you're going to want to take this in 90% of your matchups. Anything melee, you're going to want this. Even some ranged matchups, you can get away with this. We'll be getting into the two different builds later on, but with the Essence Reaver build, the D-Blade is even stronger because you're going to be needing some sort of early sustain. And although you're going to be using certain runes to get that, having the Doran's Blade early can really help you get through the lane phase. Against harass heavy top laners, you may want to run D shield. I'm thinking champs like Gnar and Jace, who you're not really going to be able to poke too effectively with your passives with D-Blade. It's probably best to go a more defensive route and maybe pair the D shield with a Ninja Tabby rush or a Vamp Scepter rush. After all, Fiora is a late game scale champion anyway, so if you can just survive the early lane, then you'll be good to outscale 90% of your opponents anyway, so there's no downside to building a bit defensively. Starter items aside, there's going to be two main builds we're looking at today. There's going to be the standard Hydra build that you're probably familiar with, as well as the new Essence Reaver build. I think it's important when you go into your ranked games that you have a degree of flexibility in your builds, so we'll be going over both of them today because I think there's a time and place for both the Hydra and the Essence Reaver build. So starting off with the standard build, you're going to want to rush your Hydra into Triforce and your tier 2 boots. That's your main core. After you've done that, there's a degree of flexibility with this first build that you don't really get with the Essence Reaver build. But it is quite situational after that point, so you can build things like GA, Sterax, Maw, Spirit Visage, Randuins. It really does depend on the matchup, so that's up to you guys to decide what you need, but here's a list of items that would be situational. You're going to want to go this build when you know you need some early sustain to get yourself through the lane phase, as well as if you think that you're more likely to group with your team throughout the game. This build is more oriented to being a bit tankier and more defensive, so you can absorb a bit more in team fights. So if you think you're going to be with your team more, you might want to go this build. But if you think you're going to be split pushing more, you might want to look towards the Essence Reaver build. So as the name suggests, the Essence Reaver build is all focused around Essence Reaver and the Essence Flare passive. This basically makes Fiora overpowered as shit every time she ults. To give you the general gist of the item, it's every time you ult and you auto, you reduce the cooldowns on all of your non-ult abilities by 20%. So that means your riposte as well. So in one fight, you're probably going to get off 2 ripostes, as well as about 100 Qs from all that cooldown. All that CDR combined with the AD that it gives you turns Fiora into one of the best split pushers in the game. So the build path with the Essence Reaver build is a bit more rigid than the standard build, and it goes as follows. First of all, you're going to want to grab a Tiamat just for that early wave control. Then I personally like to finish my tier 2 boots. Then you're going to rush your Essence Reaver. After you finish that, you're going to be pretty strong, but you're going to be lacking a little bit of movement speed, so a lot of people recommend that you just build a Phage at this point. You don't have to complete it into Triforce just yet, but having the passive of the Phage really helps you to proc all your vitals. After this, it's time to get a bit of lifesteal, and with the recent changes to Death Stance, true damage now heals, so we're going to actually rush Death Stance rather than the Ravenous. Then to finish up, we're just going to finish our Triforce and our Hydra, and then the last item is situational. Although I find myself a lot of the time going for QSS, you can pick up other items like a Sterax, a GA, or a Maw if you want. And your goal with this build is to stay as far away from your team as possible. This build doesn't give you a lot of health, but it does make you really strong at split pushing, so if your team can play around that, then that's great. Just stay in a side lane, watch the team fights obviously, and use your TP if you need to, but in a dream world you just want to stay in the side lane and shove. Okay, now we've gotten the builds out of the way, we're going to have a look at the rune choices for Fiora. In terms of primary rune, I'd only recommend Conqueror. I know some people like to take Grasp in certain matchups, but I personally don't, so I couldn't recommend it, but if you guys want to try that out, be my guest. But for me, I recommend Conqueror every game. Right, for the precision tree itself, I always take Triumph and Coup de Grace in the first and third row, but in the central one there's a degree of freedom you can have. For the Essence Reaver build, I do tend to lean towards Bloodline, just because you don't have a lot of sustain in your build until later on in the game, so having a little bit in your runes is really good to get through the lane. Other options are the attack speed in Alacrity, which is great if you don't think you're going to be poked too often. The attack speeds are always nice for 1v1s. And against certain team comps, I could recommend the Tenacity one. However, that would be if I was going to run the standard build and I would be team fighting more. Because with the Essence Reaver build, you know, you're going to be split pushing more, so you'll be in 1v1s and 1v2s. And then not oftentimes going to have enough CC to warrant the Tenacity, so in that case I'd stick to Bloodline. But if you know you're going to go the standard build and you're going to be team fighting, maybe you might want that Tenacity one. Now into the secondary tree, I'm always going to be taking Sorcery. However, the runes that I take within that tree are going to differ from game to game. Give you guys a quick rundown of all the runes. First of all, we've got Nullifying Orb. I don't take this too often, but if I'm worried that I'm going to be getting dove by double AP top jungles, something like a Vladimir and an Elise, then I might go for this just to prevent those early dives from happening. Next up is Nimbus Cloak. Again, I don't take this all the time, but into certain matchups, that extra movement speed can be really helpful. Something like a Tryndamere, when you need to kite out his ult, this can be really, really useful. But most of the time, I'm not going to be running anything from that top row. And then the first one we're going to look at is Transcendence. Transcendence is busted on the Essence Reaver build because you will be overcapping your CDR. With the standard Essence Reaver build, you'll be getting 20% from Essence Reaver, 20% from Triforce, another 10 from Death Dance, and 10 from Transcendence itself. And then there's always that chance that you could be building a more as well, so you're looking at an extra 30% over the cap. And it may not look like a lot when you read the tooltip on Transcendence, but all that extra AD really does make a difference. I suggest if you want to go and test it, just go into a practice tool, once with Transcendence and one without, and just see the difference of the damage on the dummy. There is another good option in this middle row, Celerity, which is going to increase your movement speed that you get from both your ult and your passive. I'd suggest maybe taking Celerity if you're going the standard build, because that CDR isn't really going to be as useful. And you won't be overcapping for sure, so you won't be getting any bonus AD. Finally, in the bottom row, I think there's only one that you can really pick, and that's Gathering Storm. As I've said before, Fiora's a late game champion, so having that extra power in the mid and late game from this rune is really beneficial. And as far as the tertiary tree, you can really go with what you want. It is matchup dependent. If I'm up against a heavy poke AD top laner, I'll probably run either 1 or 2 armor runes. But for the most part, if I'm feeling confident, I'll just go Adaptive Force and Health. And for the top row, that's also dependent on what build I'm going to run. If I'm going the Essence Reaver build, I might go for the CDR for extra Transcendence damage. Otherwise, I'm probably leaning towards the attack speed. All in all, I think Fiora's in quite a good spot right now. She's got these 2 builds that you can choose from. 90% of the time, I'm personally running the Essence Reaver build. I just really feel the lack of damage when I go back to the standard build. I know it does make you tankier, so maybe if you're new to Fiora, you could try starting off with the Hydra build, because it is more forgiving in that sense. But if you just want to split and be away from your team like I do, then definitely try out the Essence Reaver build. Other than that though guys, that's going to be about it for this video, so I hope you guys found this useful. If you did, I'd massively appreciate you guys liking and subscribing to the channel, or just leaving a comment on how I can improve videos. This is not a natural thing for me to do at all. This is so different to streaming, and this has taken me, like, you have no idea how many attempts this took me. But yeah, if you guys do like the video, let me know, and I will see you guys next time.